We're good to go. Apparently we can chat.
Great.
Kick things off.
Perfect.
It's a pleasure, gents.
Thank you for having us.
I feel like
The pleasure's all ours.
I'm with podcast royalty here.
Big time, mate.
You're certainly with
time,
podcast, the king of the podcast.
Nish, don't knock yourself.
Don't knock yourself. The king of the podcast is, of course, Ed Gamble. The man who has 48
That's
podcasts.
true. Ed Gamble is the king of the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be on the podium though.
I don't think I would, but I'd take that, obviously. I'd say the podium is Ed Gamble and then Chris and Rosie Ramsey together.
This is niche, but I put you down as the Kevin Hodges of podcasting.
Oh, the Plymouth Argyle legend.
Yeah, I thought that was
That's exactly what I'm looking
legacy, bit tricky winger.
for. Yeah, I'd say. I mean, obviously the 90s as well. I'd say that's fair. I'd say. I often think, what if I just had like 5 podcasts and I never left the house? That'd be a nice life, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it be exhausting though?
Yeah, it would. It sounds like you're complaining, but doing podcasts is quite tiring.
Especially with video now. Got so much to
I know,
consider.
you have to look like you're interested these days as well as sound like it. You?
What do you mean?
Do you find it tiring?
Well, my podcast is about the news, so it is quite depressing. It's not depressing. I don't know if you've read the news of late, Josh.
No.
Not a huge amount of it
What's
is a
going on?
laugh. Wow, what a damning indictment on the most recent series of The Last Leg.
We covered a funny what's it called? Plasticine Paul McCartney. We covered the big news.
Now we've got a lot to cover. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about plot twists.
Yeah.
On the front page.
Yeah.
Series 2. A lot
Yes.
to cover there. Before we do, a few randoms I thought I'd throw at you.
Yeah, go on.
And also I said to you before, this is lighthearted, so we can do silly, we can do serious.
Great.
And Nish, I was thinking, if you want to open up about stuff that's tricky, feel free. You know, Nina Simone, I know you regret not going to that
That's very
concert.
true. That's
You know,
very true.
If you want to talk about that, we can run through that.
I did an AS level instead of going to watch Nina Simone. Or I prepared for an AS level, shall I say, instead of going to watch Nina Simone at the Royal Albert Hall. And now I can't even remember what AS level subject I did.
And she's dead.
Furious.
She's dead. As a result of it, we'll never know.
I'm still livid about it. I'm still mad.
Yeah. AS levels. That just shows you how much younger you are than me. I don't even know what an AS level is.
Well, I think
the year before,
I'm only
right?
like
It's the-
2 years younger than you, and I think it's literally
On the
tells you
cusp.
it's the exact. It was the sort of 4-year period that AS levels existed for. I don't think well, maybe they do still exist,
I
but
think they do. It's part one of like the second.
it's just an exam that you do at the end of the
What kind
first year.
sad
of A-level.
17-year-olds going to watch Nina Simone, though? Come on, mate.
What kind of the same sad 17-year-old who earlier that year had been to see Bob Dylan at the London Arena?
What's the message to kids then?
What's the
Message to kids. You
message to the kids is disregard your studies.
Go and see George Benson.
Go and see, if you get the opportunity to see someone in concert, they might be dead. So do it.
One day they will be, for sure.
One day, that's the only guarantee in life,
Yeah.
is death.
Yeah.
So factor that into your exam preparation.
Yeah. There's music on every night. You're missing someone who's going to die every night. of
You've
your
got
life.
to get in there.
Yeah. Start with the oldest people. That's the way you do
Yeah.
it, isn't it? You have to see the most.
You've
likely
got to
die.
see. You've got to see. I've
Pick
seen
your
the
tickets on who's the most likely
Yeah.
to stop it.
I saw the Stones before Charlie Watts and Bobby Keys died, actually.
Yeah. Not Brian Jones, though.
No, not Brian Jones. Well, he was actually out of the band before he passed away.
Yeah, of course.
Who would you want to go and see though? If you could see anyone, that was my first random.
In history.
Any performance of any kind.
Jimi Hendrix at the Monterey Festival of Pop. In fact, just the Monterey Festival of Pop, because then you'd have been able to see Hendrix, Redding, Janis Joplin, and Ravi Shankar all in a weekend. That Otis Redding set at the Monterey, because obviously everyone knows the Hendrix set. It's iconic. It's what launched him in America. Set fire to his guitar at the end of Wild Thing. Otis Redding set is extraordinary.
Nina Simone, Royal Albert Hall, 2002. Is that the right year? Yeah. Iconic. Yeah.
Not one to be missed.
No, she said it was her best ever gig. I'm done. I might as well die now, she said, in a few years' time.
Now, I don't want to agitate, but there's a few things here. So, Josh, you were voted the second worst dressed man by GQ magazine.
Who was number one that
All
year?
Hollywood, fair enough. Awful dresser.
But I thought, Nish, what was your thoughts on that? Because I think you look smart.
Well, I'll tell you what. It was on various WhatsApp and text groups that I'm part of. It was one of our best days. It was one of our best days.
Some I'm not even on.
My family WhatsApp was blowing up. It was for our generation of British comedians. It was a fantastic day. Josh being voted the second worst dressed man.
Voted
day.
is a. They just chose them. It was just one. I'd say,
in the office.
It was a Russian election.
Yeah, it was just some work experience at GQ. It got an axe to grind.
I do think you dress better now, though.
Yeah, I think I do.
Did it have an impact?
No, it's just I've grown up.
It felt slightly unfair.
It did because I wasn't famous enough to make the list. It was quite early on.
What year was it?
16, 15, something like that.
Right, yeah.
A bit harsh.
Yeah, another bad thing that happened in 2016.
Prince's death, Bowie's death, Josh is number 2 worst dressed man in the country.
Yeah.
And Nish, are you still known as Madam Lily? Is that still a thing?
Oh, God, yeah.
What's that?
One of those idiots has just phoned me this morning to abuse me.
What's this?
My cousins in Australia, when she was, the older one was like 5 years old, she started calling me Madam Lily.
Oh.
And I asked my uncle, because they grew up in Australia, I asked my uncle, is that a reference to an Australian TV show? And he just said, no. We don't know where that's come from. And so they still refer to me as Madam Lily. It's
I'm quite charming about that.
It's so weird.
It is weird.
They're so strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an odd one.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
It'd be a good name for a tour.
Madam Lily.
Yeah.
It's not a bad name for a tour.
Yeah.
Madam Lily. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of a string of names that those two call me.
Right, let's get to a plot twist.
Okay.
The first one. Josh, I'll start with you. So, unexpected moment in our lives. We've all had a plot twist in some shape or form that can change our story, our trajectory. What's your ultimate plot twist?
Career-wise?
It could be anything.
Could be anything. Well, it sounds bad to say career-wise then, isn't it? Because then it means that you're career-led. So you should say, meeting my wife. Do you know what I mean? But really...
But what's unexpected?
Well, I suppose it is, and it isn't it? I mean, I suppose, was that unexpected? I suppose really, in terms of the weirdest things that have kind of changed my life, it would be agreeing to do a late night comedy show about the Paralympics for 10 nights.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you don't say that, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, I'd say that would be the weird, because I did that because it was like, no one's going to see it. I think it was on E4 when it was pitched to me.
Right.
I thought, don't know if that's a good idea, comedy about the Paralympics. That sounds like my career's going to end before it even starts. But no one will watch it. I'll get paid. I'll get to go to the Paralympics for 10 days. And then it's kind of now the last leg, the thing that will be the first thing in my obituary as things stand. Barring me committing some kind of awful crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
O.J. Simpson thought his obituary would start with football.
I know. And then he did Naked Gun. So I'd say that was a huge career twist, because that was, no one expected the last leg to be a topical show. It wasn't meant to be a topical show. No one expected it to last 12 years. No one expected it to be anything other than what it was. And so that was a bizarre thing to happen, and career twist and plot twist. And it does show that so much of stuff is down to luck, really, I'd say, which I think is an overlooked factor in people's lives. It's not down to graft all completely. A lot of it is down to agreeing to do a Paralympic comedy show and that becoming something else, I'd say.
But also just a good recipe, right? Good timing and...
There's if I was to think about the factors that led that to be what it was meant to be, turning into what it is, it's too mind-bending to think of one thing that could have changed that would have meant that it never happened. So you've got, if any of the three of us, me, Adam, or Alex, hadn't done it, it probably wouldn't have worked as the three. Particularly Alex, I'd say, because he just won a talent search to be a journalist on Channel 4, and he's able to have the skills to be really funny on live TV on a Friday night, which is incredibly difficult.
Not a given thing, yeah.
Not a given thing at all. The feel-good factor of London 2012, the fact London got the 2012 Olympics and Paralympics, which they shouldn't have, in the sense of they weren't meant to. Paris was meant to get it. So that was an upset in itself. The fact Channel 4 got the... it's
Lots of sliding door moments.
There's thousands of sliding door moments for that show.
That's pretty
Number one being, if they hadn't got me, it would have been nothing.
Yeah. And here we are 12 years later. Kevin Hodges are podcasting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that would be the most
cool.
sliding doors moment, yeah.
Yeah, because he is a treasure. Nish?
For me, it was when Josh met his wife. It was a total shock. We were all like, this man will never take a wife. He will live in a cave.
It took me out the game, so it meant you could move on. So emotionally, it allowed you to move on.
I don't really know. There's a lot of things that I think could loosely qualify as a plot twist. I think, I mean, like, when I went to university, I stumbled on a comedy society at a freshers' fair, and I had always wanted to do comedy, and then suddenly there was a way for me to do it, that's how I met Ed Gamble and Tom Neenan, and that's really how my comedy career started. So I mean, I guess that's a pretty big plot twist. The commissioning the MASH report is a pretty big plot twist.
Yeah, because that came out of nowhere, really, didn't it?
It really did. It was like there were 3 pilots that were supposed to go. They put out this call saying the BBC wants to do a Saturday Night Live style show, and there was no real remit beyond that. And then every production company bid for it. We were with a production company that didn't really do comedy, and so there was no real reason. I guess there were a few things that had to happen. One, they wanted a more famous host. Everyone they asked said no. That's genuinely true.
But that's huge plot twist, isn't it?
Yeah. That's genuinely true. They asked several comedians who said no because they either already had their shows or they weren't.
I had that with Last Leg. I know 2 names that said no. That I won't.
One of them's me, weirdly.
But yeah, you do think. But I think that a lot about things like, imagine the 6 people that aren't the friends.
Yes. Yeah,
or
yeah. Well, because the story that always comes up with that, which is actually kind of a famous example of it, is it happened to Lisa Kudrow because she was the first Roz in Frasier.
Right.
And then they actually got rid of her because they thought she wasn't right.
Wow.
So by the time Friends comes around, she's already lived a kind of sliding doors moment of, your life's about to change. Oh, wait, it isn't.
Yeah.
And so then, yeah, you're right. I guess there were like 6 different other... There are lots of what ifs that have to happen. But yeah, with the MASH, they wanted somebody else. The channel wanted somebody else to host, which made sense. I also was working on a different one of the pilots that I got sacked from. So I had to get sacked from that one in order for me to be free to do this.
Were you working in front of the camera?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
I got they basically they got rid of a bunch of people from that pilot that we'd been working on.
That's incredible.
So I sort of had to. That's the only reason I was free. And then I did the audition for the hosting. My agent at the time said, you won't get the hosting job, but if you do a good enough audition, you could get a correspondent job, because that's what we were aiming for. Then they couldn't find anyone else to host. The producer, I believe the people who made it wanted me, but I think there was a concern that they would. Then it came to the actual pilot record, which went really well, and we all had a really nice time, but we assumed it wouldn't get made because the other 2 shows both had much higher profile people involved in them. But the other 2 shows, I think, basically for whatever, they didn't really fulfill the remit that they were being asked to fulfill. So it isn't necessarily whether they were good or bad or better or worse. It was just that they weren't the right type of show that the BBC was trying to get on at the time. And then, Yeah, and then from there it kind of started with 4 episodes that did pretty well, but didn't really pull up any trees. But because they'd commissioned 10, we finished the run of 10 and the back 6 of that in January 2018. And the clips from that went viral are probably the reason I have a career, really. Well, certainly they're the reason I have the career, the shape of it right now. Is because really of that run in 2018.
Amazing how it plays out.
And there's so much, it's not luck, I suppose. Because I remember saying to Hilsey on Last Leg, God, it's lucky that all these things happened. And he was kind of like, and I'd say this, you say that about the MASH report, that if that had happened. But I suppose the thing is, it's to use a football analogy, I suppose, if the ball falls to you, you've got to then...
Got your chance.
Well,
it's that,
it's that thing, that the outliers thing, the Malcolm Gladwell thing, where they always... The thing that everyone remembers from it is that you have to do 10,000 hours. He uses the Beatles as a case study, and he says you have to do 10,000 hours. That's actually only one of several things that has to happen. So he actually talks about, the cultural environment needs to be right, conditions need to be correct, but then I think it's a combination of... You have to be ready, and then also that it's a combination of luck. You're right, Josh, to say, and Adam is right to say that it isn't all down to luck. But then it's a combination of the things falling in the right way and you being ready for them to fall in the right way.
But also persistence, because you said in the first couple of years of your career that actually it was pretty rough. trying to get through it and trying to make waves. And
oh my God, I've got messages that you and I exchange. I found them, screenshots from Facebook Messenger, which I don't even have access to. I don't even have my Facebook anymore. But I have screenshots of messages Josh and I sent each other in 2009 being like, it's going real bad, man. Boy, this comedy's going really bad.
Yeah. I tell you another... It's just so weird where you go. But these are all I was talking to you about this earlier, actually, in the car, about when I was in Train Crash with James Acaster, and I was going to the Leicester Mercury New Act of the Year, or Act of the Year, or whatever it was called, and Beckett was actually in the final, and Ivo was in the final as well, Ivo Graham, Rob Beckett, and they... it was very tense to have to do competitions. I was never very good at them. And
not as bad as me, to be fair. Josh actually made the final of a few competitions.
And me and James had a gig in Leicester on the same day, so we went up together, and our train derailed just outside Market Harborough. Terrifying. All the windows were smashed with stones and all this.
Jesus.
And then we had to sit there for 4 hours. It was horrific.
Acaster had already written off a couple of cars by this point, so he was just like, blue sash on,
No,
brother.
this was pre him almost killing himself and Josie Long.
That, yeah. But I think he'd done 2. That's the third. Remember, that's the third car that he'd written off.
There's some plot twists.
Wow.
But anyway, long story short, we were stuck for 4 hours, and it meant that it looked like I wasn't going to make the gig.
Right.
And then I had to turn up at the gig and go straight on after the break. So there was none of the tension, all of that. And I had a really amazing gig. And you kind of go, and I won. And my agent, who I've had since, was there, and I got signed from it.
Right, yeah.
And you go, if I'd been half an hour later, I wouldn't have got to do the gig. Or if I hadn't been in the train crash, I'd have probably been terrified I might have gone on first, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
And so, so there's plot twists there.
That's a serious plot twist.
Yeah. Do you know what? Should have gone with that one.
Right, hold the front page. Let's talk about that. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Would you say you're good journalists?
No. I'd say you haven't been.
We've ever been asked.
Yeah. No, we're bad. No, I don't.
I like the passion. The passion's
yeah.
clearly
I think
there.
we're trying our best, right?
Yeah.
I think we're trying our best.
It reminds me of our friend Tim Key used to have a great joke about him being listed on Wikipedia as being, he was described in a review as being a deliberately bad poet, and he said there's nothing deliberate about it. That's very much the way that I feel about our journalism. It's not deliberately bad. It's us trying to do it well. I think it's weirdly a thing that I think about a lot with Taskmaster, because when I got asked to do Taskmaster, it was maybe in a different era in terms of the infrastructure of that show, because the person who asked me was Alex Horn, and the way he asked me was he phoned my personal mobile number from his personal mobile. I'm pretty sure there's now a couple of layers that would be involved, but he phoned me.
It was more that in those days, your agent was very bad at replying to emails. Your agent at the time. I on more than one occasion was asked by a producer to phone Nish to check whether his agent had got the email because they had no response.
Wow. That's all true. That's all 100% true.
Do you still have the same agent?
No. No, I do not. Is he...
You just phone Nish and ask him personally if he did the last leg.
Yeah,
because we haven't heard back. Yes or no?
Oh my God, the number of emails. I guess the phrase "fail up" is probably something you'd use at this point. But when Horn phoned me to talk about it, he said the one thing I would say, the two things I would say is don't talk to anyone about the task. He was very concerned about me and Aisling Bea because he knows we're good friends. But then the second thing he said was the main thing is you don't have to try and be funny. We've configured everything.
That's why we've picked you.
Yeah, that's why we picked you. Otherwise, there's no way we'd have got you. Yeah. But we actually wanted someone more famous, but they all said no. But but it's like he just kept saying like it's configured, so if you try to do it properly, it will be really funny. And we picked.
It's like an apprentice task.
Yeah.
You can't do well on an apprentice task. They're configured, I presume. Like you watch that show, you're like, it is. I'm sorry, it is impossible to come up with a cleaning product and make an advert that isn't shipped for it in 48 hours.
Well, you guys were in Benidorm this series, right?
Yeah.
And she wanted 10 stories in a day.
It was impossible.
Mental.
Yeah, but
but that's what they're doing.
This is the thing. The only thing that I would say is in comparison to The Apprentice, the Apprentice is done under stunt conditions. You know, there's no business model that would require you to do that. Whereas with us, when she says we want 10 stories, journalists for them do deliver 10 stories.
Yeah.
So we aren't being asked to do things that they don't ask of proper journalists.
That's pretty incredible.
So the whole time we're trying to just do the kind of machinations of the job.
Yeah.
And then knowing that two underqualified people trying to be journalists is going to... I don't say unqualified because Josh literally is a qualified journalist.
So you study journalism, right?
Well, I did a postgrad.
And he clearly slept through most of it.
Yeah, I didn't
Not
do
my
much
words.
work. Didn't do much work.
So, it's like we're trying to go through the motions. We're trying to file articles. Sometimes we do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it's the volume, I think, that always even at weeks where we do brilliantly and we do get the front page, and there are weeks where we do get the front page, at the end, there is always a moment where the editor said, so you're on the front page, it's amazing. I mean, you've filed about a third of what you should have filed.
Yeah.
Well, she was quite scary, actually, that lady.
I liked her. She was one of those people who...
Old school.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's one of those people, like in a kind of film or something, where you think they're scary, but actually they've got your best kind of like...
Old
Dr. Cox in
Taskmaster.
Scrubs.
Oh, I was going to say the pigeon woman in Home Alone.
The Pigeon Woman in Home Alone.
Piers Morgan.
Is another good one. Not Piers Morgan.
No, not Piers Morgan.
He is someone who has your worst interests at heart.
Oh, yeah.
He's the
No, but that's the
anti-Pigeon
theory,
Woman.
that he played the pigeon woman in Home Alone too. Have you seen that? Have you seen that online?
Well, isn't it just a woman with where the makeup is done to make her face look red? Is that basically it?
You do a side-by-side comparison. I don't want to knock the lady.
With Trump from the set of Home Alone 2.
Yeah. What particular stories did you enjoy researching and doing? Because you've been all over the place.
Do you know what I loved doing was trying to catch the Beast of Cumbria?
Yeah, but it was an ill-conceived mission on our part.
Because I like the idea that we went all in, and whether have a guess whether it paid off, but I won't give it away. But there was part of me that when I was sat in the rain, in the pissing rain, on a Cumbrian hillside, in the pitch black, wondering if that light in the distance was a beast or whether it was just one of our camera crew.
And it was always one of our camera crew.
I did think, this is exciting.
Yeah.
I like that. The same one we did, a haunted pub.
Yeah.
Once again, no dice. I enjoyed trying to solve...
Okay, presumably listeners to this podcast could have guessed that based on the fact that there hasn't been a news story, Ghost discovered conclusively by idiots, and Beast of Bodmin Moor mauls comedians.
Right, the fact that
Some listeners will need the clarity.
350 miles away from Cumbria is one of the issues. But I enjoyed those.
I really enjoyed. There's a story about a river cleanup in South Wales that involves a cameo from Charlotte Church, who's genuinely very, very involved in campaigns to clean up our sewage-strewn rivers and coastlines.
That feels a bit more meaningful.
It was great. It was
The
really
Beast of
great.
Cumbria?
Well, I was thinking of Gus Honeybutton.
Oh, yeah. Did you watch that one?
I did watch that one.
Yeah.
And in Benidorm, that was very,
Yeah. Gus Honeybum was that wasn't as meaningful.
But
as
that was
Charlotte
meaningful. That was more meaningful than anything we've done.
Well, it was
for
to you,
wasn't
but
it?
you described him as a diseased rabbit from the 80s.
It was. It was truly. And I will say this, like, this is not a lie for the show. I genuinely never heard of Gus Honeyman before. When I approached it, I thought Josh had a nervous breakdown because he kept saying, "Oh no, it was this brilliant thing." There was
Well,
this
I have,
rabbit."
but that's unrelated.
Yeah. Sorry, Josh had a breakdown, and he was talking about Gus Honeybun. But he kept saying everyone who grew up in Devon is obsessed with Gus Honeybun. And the thing with Josh is that he has some very specific interests. Like, if you listen to Josh, everyone is obsessed with the footballing career of Neil Razor Ruddock. Like, it's
John Beresford.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
It's like
speaking my
very
language.
specific 1990s things. But when we got to Devon, everyone, as soon as we mentioned Gus Honeybun, would genuinely light up. They were thrilled by it. Older people generally. But there was still some, like, when we actually got down to relaunching Gus's career, there were little kids there with Gus Honeybun dolls because I think their parents had bought them for
It was
them.
like a hard day's night.
Wow.
But when you look at Gus Honeybun, if you haven't grown up with Gus Honeybun, you think that's one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. It looks like a haunted
Quite jarring.
rabbit. Yeah.
But I think there's a thing where, like, you get it with puppets. I think it's a fascinating world where the puppets of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
City and
We
Sweet.
will have, like, we've all done TV shows where something like Mr. Blobby or George from Rainbow or whatever on. You can do a TV show with, you could do Graham Norton and you're on with, I don't know,
Mark Ruffalo, and he
Mark
calls you
Ruffalo,
and say he implies that you're a paedophile.
yeah, well, that might happen. But that might happen.
Yeah.
But
That was outrageous.
That's one of my.
he was a lovely bloke. I liked him.
Him making a joke implying you're a paedophile is one of my all-time. It's that.
The
and
WhatsApp
Michael
group went
Portillo
crazy.
losing his seat as my top two television moments of all time. I was touring in New Zealand, and me and Rose Matafeo specifically were like, after a gig, got a McDonald's and found the TV in the place we were staying and plugged my laptop into it so we could watch Mark Ruffalo call Josh a paedophile on the Graham Norton show.
Did he say anything afterwards?
He was a lovely bloke. We got on really well. It was taken out of context in the clip because it was a running joke. But yes, but you can meet Mark Ruffalo or Ian McKellen or whatever. You're not that fussed about getting a selfie with. It's not. But there's something about those kind of kitsch characters from your youth that cut through. So you have Mr. Blobby on the last leg. You'll have a queue of people getting selfies with him at the end. You have Brian Cox. No, people aren't as fast, even though
Just me.
No,
Just me
No,
trying to get him
I'd
to
be
tell me to
interested.
fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you know
he did
what
that
I-
on this podcast.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dream. It's scary, but also quite,
He was in series 1 of Hold the Front Page.
He was in series 1 of Hold the Front Page. Lovely bloke.
Yeah, he was lovely.
He's lovely.
Yeah.
I've got some news headlines from like local
Yeah.
publications. I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty partridge actually.
Yeah.
They're very partridge. Why man shaved head to look like a badger?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll say some of them to you, and then you can tell me what you think and whether it's true or false.
Okay,
right,
fine.
okay.
So frogs are screaming, but we just can't hear them.
Oh, wow. That's so sad. If you've made that up, you've got a diseased
Yeah,
mind.
I'm going to say true because I think it's genuinely.
Yeah.
It is true.
Story.
Yeah.
It's true. Snake found in Mrs. Tattersworth's letterbox.
No, they wouldn't
Oh,
use Mrs.
they wouldn't use
Tatterworth.
Mrs. Tassleworth. That's got to be fake.
That was fake. I did that last night.
Quite innuendo-y, that.
It was. I put letter in front just to just to be clear. Johnny Depp buys a bath in Cockermouth.
No, not true. Oh, that might be
I
true.
think that might be true.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I've kind of bent the truth. It was
Right.
in Norwich.
It was in Norwich. Right.
So why did he buy a bath?
I mean, ask Johnny Depp. I'm not sure.
Listen,
Yeah.
disgraced former movie stars have got to do something with their time, I guess.
Exactly. I thought he was in financial problems, but here he is getting a bath shipped in from Norwich.
A US baseball team has been accused of fat shaming after naming its pig mascot after a weight loss drug, Ozempic.
I feel like that's false.
I
feel
think
like
it's
there's
false.
too many.
I think it's too recent.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
True.
It's true.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
have they
no
taken on
way.
a sponsorship with Ozempic? Or have they just done it?
No, they've got a pig mascot, but they just decided to call it Ozempic.
Oh my god. Not even a Zen pig.
Oh, that's a
Complete
shame.
waste of everyone's time.
Yeah,
Can't do all the work for you.
What are the odds? Exeter man receives 5 identical birthday cards.
Oh, wow.
5
True.
identical birthday cards.
That's such a good story if it's not true.
It's amazing, right?
yeah, true.
Yeah, is it true?
It's true. It's
Wow.
true. Yeah. And
Do we know what it was?
I've got no idea. I've got
That's
no idea.
fantastic.
Yeah, that's so good.
It's so
I
funny
don't think
when you-
I even received 5 birthday cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't anymore.
No.
That's just the way it is.
I'm trying to think. I think my partner and her family are quite prolific card buyers. So I
Right.
do think I get a few,
Yeah.
but maybe not 5.
Yeah, 5 are the same as well.
5's the
Yeah,
same.
that's
Yeah.
great. That was from Exeter Express.
Great.
Yeah. The Express and Echo.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
They wanted to do a news story about me.
I'm not surprised. Local
Doing
legend.
a local legend.
Yeah.
I made reference on Mock the Week to how Exeter still had an Athena.
And
And it closed down like 18 months before.
out of touch, millionaire comedian Josh Smith.
In his ivory tower.
In his ivory tower. No idea what's happening. There hasn't been an Athena here for just over a year. The guy's out of touch.
Forgotten his roots.
He's basically a white Rishi Sunak.
They are quite intriguing, though, these headlines.
Yeah.
Like,
Well-
why a man's shaved head look like a badger?
I think
I want to know
you
more
would-
about that.
Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
click through.
Well,
Yeah.
we've got so much more, I think, such a specific sympathy because of the amount of stories each journalist is having to generate. Now when I see like people going, look at this crazy local news story, I was like, it was probably 3:30. And the guy was just like, okay, that man's head looks like a badger. I just picture some very like tired local newspaper reporter who spent the morning probably doing some like quite important story about some government policy that's going to have really serious implications for their local area, but is obliged to file 2 more stories and is just looking around the high street going, is anyone's head shaped like Harry Styles? Just anything.
Yeah. But why did he shave it? That's the question I thought. Why not? I thought you'd want to have a bit of hair there. Look like a badger.
Well, badgers don't have a shaved bit, do they? They have white
Probably
and black.
grade 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have thought if you were badgering, you're not going. I believe it's a technical term. If you're badgering, I wouldn't think you were shaving. You're dyeing. You're dyeing black with a white streak.
Yeah.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. Well, there we go. That was those. Plot twist person.
Obviously
Next.
my wife.
Do you want to start there?
Who would be your plot twist person, Nish?
Unexpected source of inspiration. It could be any point in your life, career.
I mean, unexpected. I guess you expect family members and your partner to be people that have profound impacts on your life.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then your career surprised them, right? Your choice.
Oh,
of-
my career surprised my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. It shouldn't have. I would argue they weren't paying enough attention, which is what I say to their faces. Because all I did was watch The Simpsons, watch Goodness Gracious Me, read The Simpsons episode guide,
Yeah, I've
and
got
like
that book.
watch and like go and watch like Ross Noble. I was like, I don't know what about this you thought was going to add up to any other version of a career. I mean, I guess like I think probably. Well, again, I don't know how unexpected this is. I guess Ed Gamble is quite a plot twist person in my life. I met him at university. Gamble and Neenan, I met at university. But Ed had just started doing... So there was a sketch comedy group at our university, and you would write a show a term and then go to Edinburgh. And then Ed had started doing it from our first year, and then Tom and I joined in our second year. So he knew a little bit more about... But also, Ed was actually a bit more keyed into what comedy was as a job, because he really wanted to do it from when he was younger, and he'd also had a bit more of a set. He'd had more than just the impulse of I would like to be a comedian. He'd actually tried to work out what that would entail. And yeah, and he took it very seriously. Like when it wasn't like a sort of university like lark for him. He was really like, I really want to do this professionally.
So you weren't thinking this is a career. This is more.
No,
of
I
a
was,
vertic-
but I just hadn't really thought about it beyond. I would like to do
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
with a lot of things in my life. I thought only just the very top layer of I would like to be a comedian. I didn't want to do anything else, but I hadn't done any other research into what it would involve.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess like. And then Ed and Tom actually set up the stand-up night at our university, which is the first time I ever did stand-up. So I guess I would say probably Ed and Tom, maybe.
Just encouraged you a bit more, maybe.
And we're just a bit more savvy than me in terms of not just going, I want to be a comedian, but actually going, what would that, so how do you do that? Whereas I was just like, I want to be a comedian. And I was just sat there going, and I'm sure somebody will invite me on television now. I've announced my intentions. It's like when Michael Scott declares bankruptcy in the American Office episode.
Yeah.
Like, I declare that I want to be a comedian, and then just stood there.
Yeah.
And I guess Ed and Tom did more than just stand there and say, we would like to do this as a job.
You said that it took you 7 or 8 years to learn how to write comedy.
Well, arguably. It's an ongoing process.
That was left hanging as a sentence, wasn't it? You're saying 7.5 years. Are you 5 years in?
It took me 5 years to not have a day job. And then it took me, I would say that from about 2015 onwards, maybe 2014 actually. I think from the Edinburgh show I did in 2014 is when I kind of was like, in retrospect, I had worked out to some extent how to do stand up in a way that I enjoyed. So I would say probably it took me until I was 29 to really, from the age of about 21 to 29 to really work out, like, really the best part of a decade to work out how to do it to some extent. And then you keep going. It's an ongoing process of learning and evolving.
Yeah. Josh, plot twist person?
I think, well, it's kind of difficult because, as you say, like, you expect your family or your kind of loved ones. But I do think that I had my older half brother Henry was very much into. So they didn't live with me, my half siblings, because we had a different mum. That was a weird pause. But tired. It's been a long day.
Late into a day in promo, you will forget who your parents are.
But he was into stuff that was having an older sibling that was into comedy and was into music as well. You absorb that stuff in a way maybe I would never have absorbed it, if that makes sense. And so you have older tastes than you should if you were just the older sibling. So I'd say that was a huge influence on me. In terms of what I ended up being into, because you see your older siblings as cooler than you, as more kind of, they very much influence you, and so you want to do what they are into.
Also, I know Henry and he is cooler than you.
According to GQ. So that would have been a huge one. And then I think that's really kind of the important one in that respect, because I think in terms of shaping who you are, which obviously is huge, I'd have gone with that. I don't think there's anyone who you go, do you know what? There's it's weird, but there's people you've never met, or like famous people that have a big influence on you.
Mark Ruffalo.
Well, I've met him. Once bitten.
He made some allegations.
But I think it's underplayed how much influence watching people
Oh my
on
God,
TV
yeah.
or
Yeah.
listening to their music can have
Yeah.
on you. And it can have that can change your life far more than people who are in your immediate orbit. I think, but I suppose, you know, as you say, when we discuss the Gus Honeybun thing, I'm someone that really is obsessed with like popular culture, and that was really big for me growing up and stuff. So I probably was influenced far more by that than my peer groups, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, that could be loads of people, but I think it's much easier to find someone, whether that be, you know,
Rick Mail, he was a big...
Frank Skinner or Harry Hill or, you know, French and Saunders or whatever that, you know, Harry Enfield that you're into when you're growing up in terms of comedy or just in terms of your aesthetic. I mean, there's weird ones like you go, the reason I went to Manchester University was because I like the Smiths. So, in a weird
I really hope the Morrissey influence doesn't run all the way through with you. Otherwise, Series 3 of Hold the Front page could be very interesting.
Well, so I'll choose Johnny Marr. But like, things like that can change the course of your life in a really weird way. Do you know what I mean?
Even just like your behaviours. I love Ronnie Barker, and I just like his mannerisms and his quirks. You find yourself doing those sort of things.
Do you know what totally changed my comedy career? It was supporting Stephen Merchant on tour, because I think that made me... I think the best thing you can do, and this happened to you and Acaster, is support someone on tour. Because I think you spend the whole time as a comedian when you become professional, in comedy clubs where it could go wrong at any point, and it's quite a drunken kind of intense atmosphere, and you're really playing on your toes and you're just trying to get through the 20 minutes, and then you support someone for 3 months, and I just learned to play. It's just so much more chilled. It's the theatre. They really believe in you, but they've come for a different kind of night out, and also you learn to normally play. We did 10 nights at Hammersmith Apollo, and by night 6 you're like, oh, for God's sake, Hammersmith Apollo again. And you learn through just being the lucky person that gets to support this person. You just get so used to playing on a big stage.
But also, what's funny about it is like the size of rooms you go from, the factor of multiplication is like it's like 10 times big. Like Acaster and I, Josh is referencing the fact that me and Acaster both supported Milton Jones at different tours that he did, and you go from like a 90-seat comedy club to a 2,000-seat theatre. So, like, the number of people, the factor of multiplication is bananas.
Did you ever change your material when you're going from a 90-seater where it might be a bit more rowdy, a bit more aggressive, to something like a 2,000-seater where it is a bit more gentle?
The reason that it was good is it allowed me to write longer routines, because in a comedy club, you're like, get in, do the joke, get out, do the next joke, because they can't focus.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you're just, I'd say, there's a book called How Music Works by David Byrne, and there's a chapter which is about how you can trace loads and loads of different musical styles. They reflect the rooms that they were played in. So choral music being an example of that came out of the acoustics of that room, to punk clubs needing to be loud and in your face in that small room.
Oh, it's like one of the great unspoken... Well, it's not unspoken, because Big Boy talks about it all the time. Like, he's part of the reason Southern hip-hop sounds the way it does is in the kind of late 80s and early 90s, when that sound was really evolving, the place that it would get played the most was in strip clubs. And Big Boy and Andre 3000 literally talk about how like Southern hip-hop was influenced by having to make music that sounded good in a strip club. Like, it's a really weird bit of that tradition. And I think that's really true of comedy. That it has to work in a strip club. It has to work in a strip club. And my stuff got sexy as fuck. Sexy rhythmical joke. No, but like, and so you end up picking up these habits that make you... So when you start out on the open mic circuit, you learn to play to 7 people. Yeah. And there's actually, you get better at that, but those skills are not very useful the further on you get. Yeah. And then you learn to play a comedy club to drunks. Yeah. And those skills actually aren't very good for when you want to play theatres or when you want to go on TV. Because when you go on TV, it strips away
most of the stuff that isn't material. I'd say the material is much more clear on TV. You can't kind of push it through with performance in the way you can in a comedy club. And so I think doing that support gave me all the right habits for then doing my own tours and doing television, which you were getting knocked out of me by doing the comedy clubs.
But I always think one of the lessons I learned with Milton particularly is that how exacting he was about his material. He really was, and also at that point, it was very clear to me when I was having a good gig or a bad gig. Very clear. In a comedy club, it was very, very clear. But Milton, we were touring, and he would do one night, and then it would sound amazing. And then the next night, it would sound amazing, and he'd go, oh, yeah, it wasn't very good. And you suddenly realise that his whole metric for what is a successful gig has completely shifted. But also, he would be very exacting about, he made sure the material was... He was so precise and he worked so hard on every word. And I think that definitely was something that I took from that, instead of just sort of, even though we're completely different styles of comedian, which is why his support acts are very often very different tonally to him, because he wants to have some variety to the evening's entertainment. Even that level of consideration is something that I still...
It shows an exaggeration, doesn't it? I suppose,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I remember thinking, I really need to make sure that I'm thinking about because he actually didn't have to be. He could have coasted, because at that point he had become so beloved. If you go and see Milton now, his audience love him so much that he could almost coast. But the fact that he chose to not to is pretty much something definitely that I think about a lot.
And you wouldn't necessarily think about that, would you? Well, it's like even two comedians that appear the same, like a Jeff Ross, or I reference on this podcast all the time, Don Rickles.
Yeah.
Quite a put down, fast sort of style of comedy. But their methods of preparation were worlds apart.
Yeah.
Jeff Ross is like looking over his notes, every word, like you say. Don Rickles is like, sod it, just go out and, do my thing.
Yeah,
but it's interesting how it can be so different in prep.
And I think it's easy to get set in your ways. For this tour that I've started writing, that may be announced at some point, do sign up to the mailing
I was going
list.
to say, what's coming up next?
I might be announcing a tour that's miles away. Not, in distance and in time. But I've actually, due to having less time before each gig, because I was in the middle of stuff, I was just noting down ideas for routines and then trying to do them on stage, whereas I used to sweat over them. And I found myself coming up with way more. And I was like, it's like, you're like, oh, there are other ways to do it. You kind of get set in your ways of doing it.
And that's less pressure then, really.
It's less pressure. Yeah. You come up with stuff. You're like, I've got a year. I don't need to be sweating over this word before this warm-up gig 16 months before the first show of the tour. But you find different ways of doing stuff. I think generally there's a podcast called the Comedian Podcast with Stuart Goldsmith that's great. And what you realise when you listen to that is everyone has a completely different way of doing it. There's no right way of doing it. Any comedian who tells you how to do it based on their own experiences doesn't understand that and shouldn't be trusted. And that's kind of the way it is, really. I think people talk a lot about do it this way, this is a technique, I think 95% of stuff that you learn to do naturally by just doing it.
It's also, the only right way is the style of doing it that's comfortable for you. That's the only correct way.
You've got to be authentic, haven't you?
Yeah, and also there are working methods. Some people will go on stage with 4 bullet points. Other people write everything out word for word. There's so many different
There's no
ways
right or wrong way,
Nish, have you got anything coming up you want to talk about, other than obviously Hold the Front Page?
Hold the Front Page, April 24th. I have a tour that's actually happening soon. September, I start UK and Dublin. I have been saying UK and Ireland tour, and people in Ireland are rightly furious because I'm only going to Dublin. But I'm doing a tour all over the UK and one night at Vicar Street in Dublin.
Why not Cork?
September. I don't know why I'm not doing. We were trying to do.
Cork's
genuinely,
lovely.
we're trying to do Cork, but I think the dates couldn't work. We couldn't work the dates out.
Why do you hate Cork?
I don't know, but I do. That's from September onwards. So I'll be everywhere.
Nice. I've just thought of one final plot twist before I let you guys go, because you're going to a gig straight after this, Josh.
Yeah, what time is it?
What time is it? Are we good for time?
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah.
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Depending on this plot twist.
Yeah.
Depending on this plot. Hold the front page. Plot twist special. Was there an unexpected moment across series 2 that caught you off guard?
Yes, I'm sure there is. I think
Nothing's been as big a plot twist as Johnson turning up, though.
no, that was mad. That was
This
series
yeah.
one.
series. Nothing's
Yeah.
been as a stranger plot twist because we did just junk a whole. We
What
just
we were planning on doing that day
we
was
just
just
junked
junk.
a whole plan.
How angry were you, Nish?
As angry as I seem.
And I was as delighted as he was angry.
There's video evidence of it. Nothing in the second series was as big a plot twist because we didn't have to. There were minor things like we had to. Like we'd gone to the Isle of Wight because it was Cows Week, which was a sailing week, and it just rained.
The Cows
week.
Week was called off. And there's just footage of us trying to be interviewed about the fact we've now had to go and cover the circus. And we're outside the circus and my umbrella blows inside out during the interview. You're like, do you know what? This is worse than Boris Johnson.
But the biggest plot twist, because truly, that came out of absolutely nowhere. The editor of the paper genuinely called us and said he's coming tomorrow. And he was still Prime Minister. It was a whole strange thing, and I would have been amazed if we'd managed to get something as wild a plot twist as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially given the backstory, I suppose.
Well, especially given the way that it played out.
Yeah. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh,
Thank
it's been
you
a joy.
so much
Thank
for
you very
coming
much.
on.
Thank you.
It's been a
Good luck
really
with
fun
series
podcast
2.
today.
Hopefully there's series 3 on the way.
Fingers
We can
crossed.
then
Thank
come
you
back and
very
talk about
much.
that again.
Cheers.
Series 3, for me, if anything, would be a plot twist.
You've done about 5 of the MASH report, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, we did 5 of the match.
Yeah, don't put yourself down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never. Yeah. I'd say the thing is, most things. I'd say if you hit 3, you've got a mega hit on you.
You've got a mega hit. 3 series on British TV is a mega hit. 3 series on American TV is a disaster. They make documentaries of it. 3 series on British TV and you're a Hall of Famer.
Well, Hall of Fame, how many podcast episodes are you on?
No idea.
Exactly. Hall of Fame.
But crucially, they can't cancel a podcast.
We'll see, Josh. Give me time.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. That was great.
Oh, I really enjoyed
That was
that.
great.
It was a pleasure.
Lovely.
That was really fun.